The Port of Tianjin, formerly known as the Port of Tanggu, is the largest port in northern China and the main maritime gateway to Beijing. The name Tianjin Xingang, which strictly speaking refers only to the main seaport area, is sometimes used to refer to the whole port. The port is on the western shore of the Bohai Bay, centered on the estuary of the Haihe River, 170 kilometers southeast of Beijing and 60 kilometers east of Tianjin city. It is the largest man-made port in mainland China, and one of the largest in the world. It covers 121 square kilometers of land surface, with over 31.9 kilometers of quay shoreline and 151 production berths at the end of 2010. Tianjin Port handled 500 million tons of cargo and 13 million TEU of containers in 2013, making it the world's fourth largest port by throughput tonnage and the ninth in container throughput. The port trades with more than 600 ports in 180 countries and territories around the world. It is served by over 115 regular container lines, run by 60 liner companies, including all the top 20 liners. Expansion in the last 2 decades has been enormous, going from 30 million tons of cargo and 490,000 TEU in 1993 to well beyond 400 million tons and 10 million TEU in 2012. Capacity is still increasing at a high rate, with 550 to 600 mt of throughput capacity expected by 2015. The port is part of the Bohai New Area district of Tianjin Municipality, the main special economic zone of northern China, and it lies directly east of the Tidal. The Port of Tianjin is at the core of the ambitious development program of the BNA, and as part of that plan, the port aims to become the primary logistics and shipping hub of North China. On the 12th of August 2015, at least 2 explosions within 30 seconds of each other occurred at a container storage station at the Port of Tianjin in the Bohai New Area of Tianjin, China. The cause of the explosions was not immediately known, but initial reports pointed to an industrial accident. Chinese state media said that at least the initial blast was from unknown hazardous materials in shipping containers at a plant warehouse owned by Ruihai Logistics, a firm specializing in handling hazardous materials. Location and layout. The Port of Tianjin is on the coast of Tianjin Municipality, in the former county of Tangu, on the coast between the estuaries of the Haihe to the south and the New Yongding River to the north. To the west, the port borders the city of Tangu and the Tidal. To the east, the port opens up to the Bohai Bay. Tianjin Port is divided into 9 port areas. The 3 core areas of Beijing, Nanjing, and Dongjiang around the Xingang Fairway, the higher area along the river, the Biatang Port area around the Biatangkou estuary, the Dagukou Port area in the estuary of the Haihe River, and 3 areas under construction. Geophysical setting. The coastal area of Tianjin Municipality before development was dominated by mudflats, salt marshes, and coastal shallows. This littoral zone is wide and slopes gently. The 0 meters isobath extends to 3 to 8 kilometers from shore at a slope of 0.71 to 1.28%. The -5 meters isobath extends 14 to 18 kilometers from shore, and the -10 meters isobath reaches 22 to 36 kilometers from shore. These features make deep water navigation dependent on extensive dredging, and it means that land reclamation is a cost-effective option for construction. Tianjin Port is by necessity largely man-made through dredging and reclamation. History. The lower course and estuary of the Haihe is the main stem stem of a large navigable basin, as well as the westernmost seashore of the North China Plain, and there have been major ports on the area at least since the late Eastern Han Dynasty. The river port at the junction of the Grand Canal served as both an inland port and seaports, applying the northeast border of Chinese states. Since 1153, it was the critical supply hub for what is now Beijing. However, it was not until after the conclusion of the Second Opium War in 1860 that the port of Tangu became an important transshipment center, allowing ocean-going ships to lighter the cargoes to cross the very shallow sandbar, barring the entrance to the Tangu Bar. After the Boxer Rebellion, the whole of Tangu came under foreign occupation, and those foreign powers developed an extensive network of quays on the riverside. The capacity of the Tangu and Tianjin River port was limited, and so the Japanese occupation forces started in 1940 the construction of the Tianjin Xingang seaport outside the river estuary. By the end of the war, the new port was incomplete, and damage during the Chinese Civil War left it unusable by the time of its capture in 1949. The Communists reconstructed the Tangu new port slowly. On the 17th of October 1952, it reopened for traffic. At the time, the main channel was dredged to 6 meters depth, could handle ships of up to 7,000 DWT and had an annual throughput of only 800,000 tons, less than 1/500th of present capacity. The port remained small throughout the Maoist era, although it pioneered the first container routes and dedicated container terminal in China. The export boom that followed the post-1979 reform and opening period put enormous pressure on the rickety port infrastructure of China. Congestion became serious enough to force reform by the central government. On the 1st of June 1984, the port of Tianjin was transferred from direct control of the Ministry of Communications to a dual system of shared central and local control. Production then increased in leaps and bounds. In 1988, throughput passed the 20 million tons milestone, and in the 10 years from 1993, annual throughput growth averaged 10 million tons every year. In December 2001, the port was the first port in North China to reach the 100 million tons mark. In 2004 it reached 200 million tons, in 2007 300 million tons, and in 2010 400 million tons. The container handling capacity of the port increased from 0.4 million TEU in 1992 to 2.4 million TEU in 2002, 7.1 million TEU in 2007, and more than 10 million TEU in 2010. The structure of the port also changed. In 1992, Tianjin Port Storage and Transportation Company was made into a joint stock company under the full ownership of the Tianjin Port Bureau. In 1996, it was converted into the Tianjin Port Holdings Company and listed in the Shanghai stock market. In 1997, Tianjin Development Holdings, which owned the container handling assets of the port, was listed in Hong Kong. Its port assets were later spun out as the Tianjin Port Development Company and listed in the Hong Kong Exchange in 2006. The PTA delayed corporatization to steer the passing of the 11th five-year development plan for the port. The transition was only completed on the 3rd of June 2004, when the PTA became the last major port authority in China to become a corporation. The Tianjin Port Company, or TPG by its English acronym. The financial tsunami of 2008 hit Chinese ports particularly hard, as they depended heavily on foreign trade flows. The Tianjin port did better than average due to its diversification, while container business plummeted. Bulk trade remained strong. Nevertheless, the crisis hit profits hard, and it convinced the Tianjin government to reorganize and streamline the structure of the port, which they did in 2009. 2009 by having TPD take over TPC. Simultaneously, ownership of TPD was transferred from Tianjin Development Holdings to TPG. By the time the merger was concluded, on 4 February 2010, all operations in the Tianjin port had been consolidated under TPG. The port of Tianjin was adversely affected by a large industrial-scale accident in August 2015. On August 12, a series of explosions took place at a port chemical storage facility in Bohai, causing 173 deaths and nearly 800 injuries. The blast had the equivalent of 21 metric tons of TNT or a magnitude 2.9 earthquake, according to the China Earthquake Network's Center. 8 other people remain missing. Port Fairway. The Tianjin Xingang Fairway is divided into the main shipping channel, the Xuanjiadong Channel, and the Northern Branch Channel. The Dagusha Channel and the Haihe River Channel are separate fairways with slightly different regulations. Anchorages. Tianjin Port has 6 main anchorage areas and 2 temporary anchorages. All anchorages are designated for all functions: berth waiting, quarantine, inspection and pilotage, and provide little shelter from weather or rough seas. Bottom holders port are very poor. Anchored vessels are advised to keep 5 cables of clearance, as anchor dragging is common. Shiplocks and tidal barriers. The Haihe River Channel is separated from the sea channels by 3 structures. The Xingang shiplock in the northern side of the estuary is the main shipping route into the Haihe area. The Haihe Tidal Barrier, built in 1958, and last refurbished in 1999, serves as a dam, flood control sluice and tide surge protection for the Haihe River mouth. The Tangu fishing boat lock is at the western end of the channel between Donggu and Lanjing Island. In 2011, the fishing boat lock gates started to be rebuilt to allow for larger road traffic between Donggu and Lanjing. The final hydraulic structure of the Tianjin port is the Haihe Second Barrier at Dongnigukan in the Jinan district. The second barrier is also an open-type sluice barrier, with 8 vertical rising gates allowing an average flow of 1,200 cubic meters per second. The barrier opened in July 1984. It closes ship traffic upriver into Tianjin city proper, and its erection resulted in the abandonment of 29.3 kilometers of navigable channel. Port governance, state regulation and supervision. The Port of Tianjin falls under the supervisory and regulatory purview of the Tianjin Municipality People's Government. The 2004 incorporation of the Tianjin Port Authority into TPG formally divested the group of its role as port regulator, which passed to the Tianjin Transportation and Port Authority, formerly the Tianjin Transport Commission. The TTPA implements state policy on port work, drafts local policies, bylaws and regulations, and licenses, or audits, and issues certifications to businesses operating in the port, in particular to ship terminals. The TTPA supervises and manages compliance to all laws and regulations regarding environmental protection, service compliance, pilotage, maintenance of port infrastructure and handling of dangerous goods and disinfection in all terminals and storage areas. The Tianjin Municipality People's Government Port Services Office was set up in May 2009 to streamline port operations, in particular customs and inspection clearance procedures. Tianjin Maritime Safety Bureau. Harbor master powers for the Port of Tianjin are mostly vested on the Tianjin Maritime Safety Bureau, which is the local agency of the China Maritime Safety Administration. Maritime law. The Port of Tianjin falls under the jurisdiction of the Tianjin Maritime Court for all matters of national and international maritime law, including all forms of maritime contracts, torts and offenses. Inspection and clearance. Inbound ships, cargo and personnel require clearance by 4 main government bodies: China Customs for customs declaration, Border Inspection for migration formalities, China Inspection and Quarantine for quarantine and fumigation, and the MSA for ship and crew safety regulations. Obtaining clearance from these so-called 1 Customs 3 inspections used to be a protracted process, and one of the continued foci of port reform is to speed up the clearance procedures and reduce the burden. Port management. Tianjin Port Group is both the main port operator and port landowner, and retains some of the old Port Authority's supervisory functions. TPG is the holding company and ultimate controlling party for most of the Tianjin port operating units, and its affiliates and subordinate units run most aspects of port operation. The Dagukou Port area is run separately by the Tianjin Xingang Port Group Co., owned by the Tianjin Xingang Economic Area Administrative Committee. TPG also serves as port landlord, providing basic municipal services and other services, extending from construction materials to printing services, to the port's tenant operators. In this role, TPG maintains quasi-municipal authority over port areas. Finally, as with all Chinese SOEs, the control and coordination role of the local Communist Party units is significant, as is the common cross-sharing of personnel among related units. Traffic management and navigational safety, area procedures and traffic rules. The Vessel Traffic Service Center of the MSA provides traffic control, navigation assistance and local communication to all vessels in the port's fairway, anchorages and berths. The Vts Center is located in an 88 meters tall control tower at the eastern end of the Dongtu-Di, and has 2 subordinate monitoring stations at Dongjiang and Lingang. Its control area extends 20 nautical miles from the tower. Compliance with the VTSC's authority is mandatory, and all ships must maintain watch on its VHF channel while on the port area. On the Haihe, both VHF 09 and 71 must be on watch. Aids to navigation. The Tianjin Port's aids to navigation system is fairly dense and growing rapidly. The MSA Bohai Navigational Security Center's Tianjin Aids to Navigation Office is responsible for the maintenance of all navaids within the Tianjin area. In 2004, the ATAN office controlled 141 navaids in the Tianjin jurisdiction, including 3 lighthouses, 12 light beacons, 22 lead markers, 44 day beacons, 55 light buoys, 1 NDB station, 1 RBN DGPS station, 3 radar transponders, 2 large ATAN ships, 2 small ATAN ships and 1 survey ship operating from 2 wharves. Weather monitoring and reporting. While the port directly operates a number of hydrometeorological stations, weather forecasting is primarily the responsibility of the Tianjin Binhai New Area Weather Warning Center, the local agency of the Tianjin Municipal Weather Bureau. The warning center uses local, national and satellite data to forecast marine and port weather. Maritime communication. Tianjin Coastal Radio. The Bohai Navigational Security Center's Tianjin Communications and Information Center runs the Tianjin Coastal Station. The station is in charge of the communication obligations of the global maritime distress safety system in the port's jurisdiction, supports the SAR Center's communication needs, and supports the MSA's duties of coordination and communications, SAR operations and emergency response, maritime rescue coordination. The primary SAR coordination agency is the Tianjin Maritime Search and Rescue Center, with responsibility for coordinating all SAR activities in port waters. The Tianjin Search and Rescue Base is one of the 6 rescue bases of the China Rescue and Salvage Bohai Bureau, which is the frontline rescue and salvage force of the Ministry of Transport. SAR assets. Tianjin Rescue Base keeps 3 dynamic standby stations, normally with the following units: Search and Rescue Bases WAR, 1 fast rescue boat and 1 rescue tug. Dagukou Anchorage, 1 1,940 kilowatt rescue ship. Beihai Second Point, 1 1,940 kilowatt rescue ship. Tianjin Port PSB Fire Services Detachment holds the firefighting and fire prevention duties for both the land and water areas of the port. Emergency medical assistance. The Tianjin Port Hospital is the primary provider of emergency medical care in the port. It is a 314-bed comprehensive hospital owned by TPG, that is specially licensed to deal with infectious disease outbreaks, quarantine and maritime accident trauma. Its orthopedic trauma department is especially well ranked nationally. Pollution control. Tianjin MSA is the port's national operational contact point pursuant to MARPOL, and must be contacted in all incidents of ship-borne harmful substance spills. The State Oceanic Administration has overlapping authority regarding spills and pollution, usually concentrated on oil platform and pipeline incidents. Law enforcement. The maritime governance regime in China is peculiar in its multiplicity of actors and apparent duplication of labor. 5 major agencies, plus the local People's Police and other local units, divide maritime and coastal law enforcement, safety and administrative duties, with much overlap in formal remits. These agencies' responsibilities reflect the functional jurisdiction of the parent ministries, and their operational emphases fit those jurisdictions. Only the Coast Guard patrol vessels are armed gunboats, and the Guard has first-line jurisdiction in gendarmerie missions such as terrorism, piracy and serious crimes. People's Police units. The Tianjin Port Public Security Bureau is one of the 14 branch offices of the Tianjin Public Security Bureau, with sub-bureau status. It is responsible for public order, law enforcement, criminal investigation, road traffic control, and fire safety and firefighting. Water Police. The Tianjin Port PSB has its own water police unit running its own patrol boats, which are berthed on a floating pontoon station built on a converted floating crane, currently located on the K1 berth of the Tianjin Port Passenger Terminal. Border protection. The public security border troops are a gendarmerie force under control of the MPS in charge of border protection and security. The Border Guard's local ground unit is the Binhai New Area Public Security Border Protection Detachment. The Tianjin Customs Anti-Smuggling Bureau, usually called the Anti-Smuggling Police, is a People's Police unit under the dual command of the MPS and the GAC. It is the main body engaged in control, prevention and investigation of customs fraud and duty evasion and smuggling. Other law enforcement bodies. The law enforcement arms of the MSA are the Tianjin Maritime Public Security Bureau and the Tianjin MSA Law Enforcement Patrol Flotilla. The Tianjin Maritime PSB is responsible for maritime law enforcement and carries out marine accident and criminal investigations. The patrol flotilla deploys 11 patrol ships which monitor and manage shipping traffic, maintain navigational order and safety, and cooperate on patrol, escort, and search and rescue missions as needed. The second detachment of China Maritime Surveillance of the Tianjin Oceanic Administration has jurisdiction over the Bohai and Haihe Bays, and over all the coastal areas of Tianjin and Haihe. It monitors environmental damage, illegal use of sea resources, violation of maritime regulations, and damage to marine facilities. The Tianjin Fisheries Management and Fishing Port Supervision and Management Office is a branch of the Tianjin Fisheries Bureau under the China Fisheries Law Enforcement Command Center. It is in charge of enforcing fishing regulations, of controlling illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, and of fishing navigational safety. Business structure. Ownership structure. The Port of Tianjin is a state-owned enterprise, run as an independent corporation, with separate finances and a commercial orientation. The port owner is the Tianjin Municipality People's Government, through the Tianjin SASAC, which is the full owner of the Tianjin Port Company. TPG's board is appointed by the Tianjin government. TPG is the effective holding company and main port operator, and it owns or has a stake on the majority of the port's various operating outfits. Since the 2009 merger, TPG's main operating subsidiary is Tianjin Port Development Co., Limited, which in turn is the majority shareholder of Tianjin Port Holdings Co., Limited. TPG has been injecting operational assets to TPC for several years, and since 2009 to TPD. This has created somewhat of a functional division. The listed TPD, directly or through TPC, controls all terminals and direct cargo handling operations. TPG still directly controls most of the utility, support and ancillary units related to the port, and retains control of strategic planning.